All right, thanks everyone for having me today. My name is Monika Wieland Shields. I'm the director of the Orca Behavior Institute, which is a nonprofit based on San Juan Island. And I was asked to share a little bit of information about the tracking of orcas that we do in Washington's inland waters, really utilizing the power of community scientists. So I just wanted to start by showing a couple of the maps and graphics that we've been making utilizing this sightings data. We've been putting together for a few years now annual and monthly sightings maps of both southern resident and Biggs killer whales in the Salish Sea. And really, our motivation for starting the Orca Behavior Institute was here on the ground on San Juan Island as community scientists ourselves, we were starting to see all these changes in habitat usage from both populations of orcas, and based on what we were witnessing, what colleagues were witnessing around the area, and we really decided that it was worth starting to put some of this data together and tracking some of these changes so that we could get that information out there, because historic data of what the whales have done is, of course, extremely important, but that seems to be rapidly changing. And so, documenting what they are doing is equally as important. And so that was kind of the initial motivation for this, and it has really grown since then, as I'll describe. So this is just one example of our Biggs killer whale sightings throughout the region from 2021. The different colors indicate the different seasons the sightings occurred, and then the size of the circles indicate the group size of Biggs killer whales. This also, this type of sightings data also allows us to track overall presence over time of both ecotypes. So we are tracking both populations, and we can see, looking at number of days present in inland waters each month of the year over the last, 3+ years, and on this chart here. So we have the southern residents in blue, and the Biggs killer whales or transients in red, and the last 3 years of data showing up through July of this year, just showing number of days the whales are present each month of the year, and seeing how those patterns have changed compared to historic numbers. For instance, you'll notice the big drop off in southern resident sightings, particularly in April, May, and June, which used to be a peak for them here in inland waters, yet we're still seeing pretty high numbers of them in the fall months, September, October, November. And we really focus on compiling all of this data from a variety of sources, and then sharing that back with the public and all of the stakeholders that have contributed data, so they kind of stay engaged in participating by seeing their data in action. And we've had really increased interest in these maps and charts over time as people see how their reports are contributing to this sort of region-wide tracking of whales. And all of our work is really possible by 3 major sources of data that we compile, which I'll briefly talk about here. So we are often, giving credit to the Pacific Whale Watch Association, Orca Network, and other community sightings networks. So I'll just go through each of those briefly here. So the Pacific Whale Watch Association has long been an amazing network of whale sightings throughout the region, because they're experienced and professional observers. They know who and what they're seeing, and they have a geographic coverage throughout the Salish Sea, and that wouldn't be possible, by any one research group, just because they're on the water every day throughout the region. And their sightings networks have taken kind of various forms over the years. We had the pager days, where they would pager reports that we could log of locations of the whales. They went through some different social media platforms, and most recently that has taken the form of their custom built PWWA app, which is a screenshot shared here. So this app was developed in 2018 by Johannes Krieger of Crystal Seas Kayaking. And it's originally utilized by all 30 companies within the PWWA, which depart from 23 different locations throughout Washington and DC. So again, just emphasizing that amazing geographic scale. And what you're seeing here, the black squares represent GPS logs of a vessel that's actually on scene with whales. And then it indicates, the species or ecotype of whale, the direction of travel. The app itself shows reports over the last 48 hours or so, and you can see the boxes kind of diminish in size as time goes by. So you can sort of see just by at first glance where the whales are traveling. The GPS log is an extremely powerful feature because obviously that takes out some of the error of whale location, because this is, exact reporting in real time. The green circle there represents a manual log. So you can also take a shore-based observer can drop a manual report of where they're seeing whales, or if somebody else, is relaying a report, they can put those on the app as well. And in addition to the Pacific Whale Watch Association members themselves, they've started to, contract and create data usage agreements with a wide variety of other users, including North Vancouver Island Marine Mammal Sightings Association, the Campbell River Whale Watch Association, various regional research groups like ourselves, individual commercial vessel pilots and marine mammal observers. All the reports go directly to the Canadian Coast Guard's whale desk. Oil spill and entanglement response teams can request access to the app, which has played a role just recently here with the Aleutian Isle going down. And then Soundwatch and Straightwatch also utilize the app. So you'll see these reports from a few weeks ago this month of Southern residents heading up Boundary Pass. Those GPS app logs came from Soundwatch and Straightwatch as they were moving up Boundary Pass. We also rely really heavily on Orca Network, which is primarily Puget Sound based tracking, utilizing, an amazing number of community scientists throughout kind of central Washington. They've been in place since 2001 and have grown to have nearly 16,000 email subscribers to their weekly sightings reports, as well as close to 190,000 followers on social media. So really, amazing number of community members engaged. They send out these weekly sightings summaries, which allow all the data that they're inputting to kind of be shared back with the public and research groups. And they also promote shore-based whale watching. So here's a Google map showing their viewing locations throughout Puget Sound. And so they are also just collecting an incredible amount of data on whales when they're down in Puget Sound proper. And then have an amazing archive, going back to their founding of historic sightings throughout the region, which is just an incredible public record. Then more recently, with the advent of social media, we've also really utilized regional sightings pages, primarily on Facebook. We created one here, whale sightings in the San Juan Islands. This map shows the location of more than a dozen other such pages that occur throughout the Salish Sea. And these allow, again, even broader geographic and temporal coverage, because a lot of these are citizens who live on the shoreline or are regularly out there, for work or for play on the beaches. And so they're looking for whales, and reporting whales really from dawn to dusk, 365 days a year. And while this doesn't have the same level of kind of vetting that sources like the PWWA app have, where you only have experienced observers contributing, the nature of social media allows for photos and videos to be shared. So we, can go through those and identify whales that are reported and really engage directly with the public, providing education on which whales that they've seen, and really sort of increasing just awareness and interest in tracking whales. Most of these Facebook pages, will share our monthly sightings maps and really emphasize how their page has contributed to regional sightings. And it's become this really amazing collaborative network kind of throughout the region, as people will sort of at times, pass the whales from one sightings group to another as they're moving through the region. These Facebook pages have also become a great forum to share acoustic detections from hydrophones that are live streaming online, including the Orca Sound ones here in Washington State. So it's harnessing, the power of acoustic data in addition to the visual sightings, where when people hear something, they'll report it in real time. Other people will tune in and either, clarify what's being heard or that sort of thing. So it's been fun to see sort of the evolution of these pages just within the last couple of years, where we really have tens of thousands of citizens engaging in tracking whales in the region. So the role that we play in all this is at the Orca Behavior Institute, we really compile sightings from all of these different sources. That involves, vetting these reports for accuracy. So depending on the source, making sure it's coming from an experienced observer who knows what they're seeing, or combing through those photos and videos to confirm identifications. And then putting these all together allows for region-wide tracking of whales. So this shows tracks of southern resident killer whales over the last couple of years based on all of these different sighting sources. And we can sort of, build more recent maps based on more recent sightings data on where they're actually traveling now, compared to some of those historic data sets that indicate, where they used to travel 20, 30, 40 years ago. And what's really cool about this kind of tracking is we're also getting those important behavioral insights into, their sort of cultural or behavioral preferences in specific areas. We know which regions they tend to spend a lot of time in when they might be spread out and foraging. We know which regions they tend to specifically travel through. Sometimes they travel from point A to point B pretty quickly when they're in a particular area. They tend to be, surface active or vocal in certain regions and maybe less so in other regions. And all of this type of, sort of community knowledge that we've built of, oh, we know they tend to take this long to go from turn point to East Point. We know they tend to go, faster when they're coming from turn point to the west side of San Juan Island. And that sort of community knowledge that we built seems like it could be really informative to some of these models and projection models to kind of harness that visual data of people on the ground and hopefully incorporate it into your efforts of predicting whale movements on a greater scale. I was also asked to give a brief update on the Aleutian Isle, the fishing vessel that sunk on the west side of the San Juan Island earlier this month, just as a kind of hot topic of interest. The vessel went down on the afternoon of August 13th. The reason for the sinking has not yet been determined, but the vessel is still down there. So it's located near Smuggler's Cove on the west side of San Juan Island. The Coast Guard released this bathymetry image, which is really striking, showing the location of the boat. It's currently bow up in a little over 200 feet of water, and it's right on the edge of a 700-foot cliff. And so it's really key that the vessel stays in place if it's going to be salvageable. If it does reposition into deeper waters, it would pretty much be considered lost at that point. The vessel was carrying 2,500 gallons of diesel, 60 gallons of hydraulic oil, and 20 gallons of engine oil. It's estimated that about 400 gallons of diesel spilled as the vessel went down, which resulted in a sheen that extended the whole length of the west side of San Juan Island. That diesel has since dissipated, where it mostly evaporates and doesn't persist in the environment the way that crude oil does. There's obviously been great concerns about potential impacts on marine life. Southern resident killer whales specifically were only in Harrow Strait, coincidentally on the night of the incident. And really all the sighting sources that I just mentioned came together and cooperated in a pretty incredible coordinated response in terms of tracking the southern residents as they moved into Harrow Strait that night. So community members were reporting on the Facebook pages. Some of us were relaying those reports to both Orca Network and the PWWA app, and those both the night of the incident and since then have been communicated directly to the Unified Command managing the incident. So they're getting regular updates on locations of not just southern residents, but all marine mammals in the vicinity of the spill. To this point, there are hazing teams on standby, ready to try and deter marine mammals if they're entering an active sheening area. But to date here, no marine mammal deterrence has occurred. Currently, the sheening is pretty minimal. There's only small sheens of diesel that have been seen as the vessel continues to vent. The Coast Guard and their contractors have placed protective booming in sensitive nearby areas, primarily bays that have a lot of eelgrass. Over the last week to 10 days, they've brought in specialty deep water divers and equipment that's required, and those are now all in place. Their focus for the few days here this week is currently on retrieving the remaining nets that are aboard the vessel, which need to be removed for safety of the salvage of the entire vessel. And then they plan to start preparing the vessel for raising, which includes, attaching the necessary equipment, plugging the vents, and the whole process is expected to take, maybe another week to 10 days or so is what we're hearing right now. So it's quite extensive. There's a lot of amazing organizations partnering on this to hopefully ensure the safe retrieval of the vessel and the estimated, 2,000 plus gallons of diesel still on board. And amazing cooperative network as well of various sources reporting sightings so that they're aware of any marine mammals that are entering this area. So that kind of covered a lot of information very quickly. If there's time, I'm happy to take any questions, or if anyone's interested in, learning more about our data, sightings data, and behavior data of southern residents and big killer whales, you can always reach out to me directly via email, Monika at orcabehaviorinstitute.org. Thanks again for having me.